Welcome to Education in Focus. I'm your host, Aliana Kernodle. A Rhode Island mother is suing her child's former school district after the school initially denied her public records requests about her child's curriculum and other school policies, and the local teachers union sued her to try to get her to stop. Joining me to discuss this is Chalkboard News editor Brendan Clary. Brendan, what is the background that led up to this lawsuit?
Yeah, that's a great question. So essentially, a Rhode Island mom of a student in South Kingstown School District, she basically asked the school, like, hey, what's going on in my school? This was back in 2021 during COVID. There was some shutdowns. And I think that's when a lot of people point to kind of when parents started getting really involved in their child's education. They started seeing like the online school. They started asking a lot of questions. I think moms really, really got a lot of, wind in its sails because people were, starting to ask these kinds of questions and sort of like ask about critical race theory and some gender ideology and stuff like that too. Nicole Solis, Rhode Island mother of a student in that school district, basically asked the school, like, what's going on here? Like, what are you teaching my student? And in 2021, asked about that and was told you have to file a public records request. We're not going to be able to give you that information. So it was stonewalled essentially and started having to use, basically the legal mechanisms, try to find, okay, like what is going on? Like what are people saying in emails? What are people saying? And basically started filing a whole bunch of emails. So Solis started, asking for the minutes for meetings, for the different advisory boards that had maybe like an equity focused agenda or like the curricula for her student, and also different policies and like gender, like pronoun usage, right? So the school allegedly did not use the term boy or girl to describe students and basically asking about that, like what is going on? So that's kind of the background, is that Solis, basically filed a lot of requests, and that was not taken too kindly. The school district did not, smile upon the hundreds of, I think it was like 160 public records requests, right? And so these, if you're not familiar, you can ask your school district or pretty much any government, really. Without special carve-outs like in some states. But you can ask your government for public records. So things like emails, things that are, in the usual course of business for government operations. You can say, hey, I'd like to have that information as a taxpayer, as a public, like you are a public entity, you need to provide this information. And so the school, and subsequent cases as well, said that it did not have records. So like in a previous court case that I wrote about, Solis actually won because she said she requested records for a certain advisory board about race. So Black, Indigenous, People of Color Advisory Board. It's called BIPOC Advisory Board. Basically did not allow her to attend its meetings. And so she filed a lawsuit alleging violation of the state's Open Meetings Act. And basically the school said that the meeting minutes did not exist. But they did. So they were fined, a bunch of money, and like a civil fine. So I mean, so like this kind of thing of like they had the records, they did not turn them over. And so it's like a government transparency issue. And that's what's going on here again, is that Solis is saying, look, you've hidden the records from me. And there was kind of leading up to this too, there was a lawsuit from the teachers union, which basically was against the school, but it included Solis as a plaintiff. So if you are suing, like it was suing the school to like stop the records requests, but it wasn't directly aimed at her. She was just kind of listed as a defendant, I think. So it's like one of those things where you can do like we can try to get things to be quiet. And so the only way that she could stop that litigation is by saying like she would stop filing these requests or something like that. It would basically take away her ability to do, her public information requests. So it's a very interesting sort of like, we get into these legal tactics, but it does look like there's like a lot of animus behind it. Some of this kind of like, we don't want to share information and we're not going to, play ball with what we're required to do by the law.
So what is this particular lawsuit about? What is she alleging here?
Yes. So essentially, she's saying that I was not provided the information that I was requesting. And, the whole teachers union thing as well, like the lawsuit as well, like was a violation of my First Amendment rights and 14th Amendment rights. So basically this violated my ability to ask the government, petition the government, and to, be able to find the information that I have a right to by law. And so I think that's really what this is about, is like free speech and the right to petition the government, like this kind of government transparency. That's kind of at the heart of it, without getting too technical into some of the details there. But I mean, essentially she's saying the school owes me an explanation. It owes me these records and this information, and they have not been doing that. So I think that's really what's at the heart here. And I mean, as a journalist who's asking school districts for these kinds of requests all the time, it can be very frustrating to know they have, a responsibility to provide information, and then they just won't. And then in some cases, they won't even answer. They pretend like they're not getting the information, and they just like won't comply with the law. So that's really, I think at the heart of this is that she's asked for this information, and the school is saying that we're not going to provide it.
So where at in the process is this lawsuit?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's early stages. So we had that previous lawsuit, and this is like a new lawsuit because the school was actually removed from that lawsuit, right? So there was like some, as listeners may or may not be aware, like you can be removed from a lawsuit if you were not like supposed to be on it. Kind of, you can make the case that like, hey, I was sued, but in my official capacity, but like I should not have been. And that's happened in some other court cases. Like somebody will sue the state of, California, and they'll put Newsom on there, and then Newsom will argue, like Governor Gavin Newsom will argue, like, I'm not supposed to be on here. Like this is not my fight. And so I think that was part of the issue here, is that the school successfully said, this isn't our fight. And so this is taking it to the school and saying, look, you did not hold up your responsibility to turn over documents that were requested and that you had. Part of the background here, too, that I forgot to mention is that at one point the school board was considering suing Solis because of the public records request. So it was the school board debating whether or not to take litigation to like go out against her and say, like, we're going to sue you for filing public records requests, like doing what you're allowed to do by law. And there gets into some more, stuff with the teachers unions representatives sitting on a school committee and sort of like that exchange of information with like the superintendent and the teachers unions against Solis. So really, to answer your question though, Eliana, it's pretty early in the court case. So we'll have to see, how that shakes out in the coming, months and years even. It can, as the legal process goes on.
Well, Brendan, thank you for your insights on the story. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at chalkboardnews.com.